RPA Today Show, hosted by Howze and Wilton Rogers. The show that brings you the latest insights on RPA, robotic process automation, and how it's impacting every industry, as well as interviews with companies that are currently winning big with this technology. You'll also hear from other industry leaders and experts who will be sharing some of their success secrets to help you become more productive and to grow your business. This show is brought to you by Simply Automate, where we help you get more done in less time and more ease for your mind with strategic business automation. Learn more at www.simplyautomateinc.com, and please follow us on LinkedIn. If anything in this show resonates with you, please let us know by leaving a review. The RPA Today Show, where you just might learn something you didn't know. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, everybody around the world, welcome to the RPA Today Show, the show that may teach you something you didn't know about technology. I'm your host, Rob Howze, my co-host, Wilton Rogers, the automation expert, hashtag automation guy, hashtag ask Wilt about what the robots are doing for humanity. This is the show where we go into it, man. How you feel today, Wilton?
I'm good, man. I'm great, especially having our guest on today for sure.
We got a great guest. We got a guest today who not only is a fan of technology, but he's actually implementing it in his business and helping others do better with it. And so I'm excited to have Christopher Mundon on today. Chris is in the house, and he's the co-founder and CEO of LittleNewt. Now, I'm going to read the bio here from LinkedIn. Leading the team at LittleNewt. LittleNewt is a tax preparation and practice management platform for independent CPA firms that enables real-time integration with their clients' accounting systems using AI and automation to instantly create tax returns and provides year-round accurate tax information. That's year-round and accurate. I think those are two good words in the tax world. I think year-round and accurate. I think, do those go together, Chris, or what?
I think accurate, year-round, and also quick are three really key words.
Bing, 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 bing. Well, thank you for being on the show today, Wilton. Thank you for introducing me to another world changer. And so, we're going to kind of dive in and learn more about you. But Will, you want to add something before we kick this off?
What I'd like to add is when I first he'll talk about it more, but when I first met Chris, we do a lot of production, but his understanding and willingness to take it from the beginning and just be all in has made it so much easier, not only for us, but us to really understand our capabilities to be able to do things faster than we expected. Because this process wasn't our regular process that we did for him. Mm-hmm. It was very complex, and it was just original, which he'll go into. But just his understanding of technology and where it's going and what he needs to do just made it a lot easier for us to be able to put that into play for him, but also prepare for allow us to show us how we need to prepare for our future clients. So I don't think he understood. I don't think he knows, but he's helped us really fine tune our internal system as well. So
thank you, sir.
Yeah,
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Chris, welcome to the show, man. Thank you for being here. And why don't you just kind of share a little bit about how this began for you? Because I know this is in the history of your family. This legacy that's continuing.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here. Really like what you guys are doing, what you guys build. Let's kick it off with my background. So I started off in the tax world at EY in San Francisco, doing a lot of private equity tax. Mid-on switched to PwC, but kind of the same thing, a lot of private. And then prior to me, my dad was at Arthur Andersen doing tax compliance, and my granddad actually was I don't think they had the CPA designation at that time, but he would have been a CPA back in the 50s and 60s. And they actually found out recently that my great grandfather on my other side of the family was also would have been a CPA, but again, this is like the 30s, and they didn't have that designation at the time. So I found out there's actually like a large generational thing, inheritance in the industry. So none of us have owned our own firms before. So it's not like my great granddad started a firm and just kind of went down. So we all just kind of ended up in the public accounting sphere and then branched off. And kind of what we built is kind of born of the pains I have when I very first started, when I was like a first year associate at EY. Kind of we would work, 80-hour weeks just doing what I feel like a trained monkey should have been able to do. Like about 90% of the work a trained monkey would have done. And it's just the fact that there was no, like, the technology is very 1990s based, caused so much heartache, and it's just in dire need of a solution. So I left PwC, co-founded LittleNewt with the idea of basically creating an automation platform that would free up CPAs to spend more time, with friends and family, but also being a more value-added, tax professional, spend more time doing, consulting, but also client engagement, client outreach, just kind of free up times you're spending less time on work papers, returns, and more time, building a book of business and, building a better book of business.
Better book, yeah. That's good. That's good. I think that's the goal of every business. It should be to build a better book. I mean, and you're building this better book by certain technologies. It's not just about getting any kind of technology and just trying to, get overwhelmed by the newest, shiniest thing, but it's about actually getting strategic with certain tools. So let's talk about, how you are actually using RPA. Let's talk about how you're using RPA in your everyday.
Yeah, so our product uses two things. We use an API and we also use RPA. API is kind of how the first stage of the process. So the first thing we do is we're able to automate the work paper build. I'm assuming a lot of your listeners are CPAs or accountants. So, like, for me, I feel like I don't really need to explain kind of what a work paper is. But we're able to, like, instantly prepare work papers by creating API to QBO, to Xero, and FreshBooks. Now, where the RPA comes in is the RPA is extremely valuable for us because the idea is there should only ever be one place where the user, or in this case the CPA, interacts and changes data. And that should be the work paper. And if you have multiple places where you touch data, say the tax forms and the work paper, then you're just creating redundancy and you're greatly increasing the chance for error. And anybody who's ever been a senior or manager to do detailed review knows what I mean. Like, it's so common to get something from an associate or from a senior. We're just like, you've asked them to change one thing and they change it in the work paper, but they didn't get the form, or they changed the form, but they didn't get the work paper, so they don't shoot on time. You have to kick it back down, and you just waste time and you waste money. So the idea is the RPA is basically what takes the data from the work papers and puts it into the tax forms. And the idea is the preparer should never have to interact with the tax forms manually. All the work should be done in the work paper. So when you kick off the RPA, it just fills out Drake, it fills out UltraTax, it fills out Lacert, and it fills out ProConnect. Those are the four we interact with. So there's no actual need to actually go in making the updates to those. It's, if you have to run an update, you update Excel, then you run the RPA again, and you update the tax. So the idea that what we use the RPA for is basically to do what has historically been done by data entry. So to kind of like take it back a step, when I was at UI, as a first year and second year's associate, my job was basically, we spend 3 months in the spring just creating these Excel workbooks. And then we spend 3 more months in the summer working 80-hour weeks just doing data entry. Like, we knew exactly what the data was, line by line, investor by investor, K1 by everything was already figured out. We just had to put it from one place, and then we had to go from what was take data from what was in Excel and put it into Go systems, which is a Thomson Reuters product. But it would take us 3 months just working 80-hour weeks. I mean, it broke people just doing this, just data entry. And the RPA that our two teams have built, being able to take data from the work papers that we've to these tax forms, that eliminates that entire second step. Like, what took us 3 months to do, it can now be done virtually automatically with what our two teams have built.
Whoa! What took you 3 months to do can now be done. Was the word automatically?
So I would say, I want to say automatically, but it takes a bit of time. It would have taken me 5-6 hours to do a very simple return with our PE clients, maybe an entire day, to do. Well, the bot you guys have built is like 15 minutes, so it's not completely automatically. But the amount of times, like, the RPA, what RPA has allowed us to do is eliminate the entire second busy season. So when I was talking about, as a young professional, I had spring busy season where we just do the work papers, and then I had the summer busy season. So what we were able to figure out and solve is the first part. So we were able to cut down on the first busy season with our APIs. What your RPAs have been able to do is eliminate that second busy season. So now you're not in the office 80-hour weeks just filling out a bot's doing that. You don't even need to have the second busy season. So as soon as you're done with the work paper, you can run the bot and you'd be done.
Wow.
Yeah.
That
And when you
sounds-
told us, because I remember this and having a conversation, because I remember saying, well, Chris, how long do it usually take one person to do it? I think you said someone that sees it could probably take about 3 hours to do one.
Yeah.
If they're out of college, maybe 5 to 6 hours. You don't know, it could be about 5 hours at least. And now the bot's doing it in 15 minutes.
Yeah, and I don't want to say in general, because every client's different, and there could be a unique situation where you've run into something stupid and it takes a lot longer than it should. Each client is different, each client is unique, but in general, a small business return, I feel like it should take 5 to 6 hours for a first year associate to fill in the data in Drake or UltraTax. A more seasoned person like myself, when I was a senior, I could probably have done it in half the time, but I was a senior, and senior I built at a much higher rate. But still, it's because you know the system is, you just know where to go. You're not searching. That's kind of the power of what our two teams have built, is that it's what would take me when I was at my fastest, 2 or 3 hours. This thing can do in 15 minutes. And it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, it just.
And it does it flawless.
Power and freedom. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
And it does it flawless.
What does that do for you as a company, knowing that, I don't have to do this anymore? What is that outside of the, obviously it's being automated now, but those 2-3 hours that you do, or the 5 or 6 hours that someone new takes, what will that do for not only your company, but someone that is looking to do this?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we have two basic business models. We have our own book of business. We do service some clients that we do, we are their pay preparers, we're their tax firms, so we'll prepare their returns, do the work papers, and we file returns for them. We also license this software to other CPA firms. So we have two business models. For ourselves on our end, we're able to have more clients per prepare or per CPA than most tax firms would be able to do. So for example, the tax firm has been historically was a very unscalable enterprise to some extent. For every X amount of revenue you bring in, you must bring in Y amount of labor. And that's even harder now than it's been historically, because labor in this industry is very short. The CPA firm, going through the firms, it can lead to a very lucrative and valuable career. But being a first year associate, second year associate, when you're working 60, 70, 80-hour weeks and you're not getting paid that much, there are very few people who want to go through that to get to the pay dirt, which is later on. So finding labor has been kind of an issue for not just ourselves, but a lot of our clients. And this frees up a lot of that, because we don't need to have the same amount of associates or seniors that most CPA firms would have to have per client. So we can charge less per return and still have a higher margin. That's kind of what's enabled us to do. And then we're also licensing it to CPA firms that that exact same issues. That's kind of what's allowed us to do. It also has a much greater valuable, quality of life. What has been the joke about the industry for as far back as I can think, I'm sure it's gone back several generations, has been the work-life balance. It's been it's a joke. But I feel like it's now, because of technology, becoming a thing. There's no need to be in the office doing, mundane tasks, filling out Excel, filling out forms. That's kind of what it's enabled us to do. And I want to kick it back over to you guys, but there's one thing I want to mention. So a lot of CPA firms, when they get, to the 5 to 10 members level, they'll actually outsource a lot of the work to India and the Philippines. And most of their clients don't know about it, so they'll cut costs that way. Where with our technology, there's never a need to outsource anything. It's all done by software in the United States. So there's no risk of sending your clients socials, EIN numbers, addresses, names, and all that overseas. It's now entirely done within your internal organization in the States.
That's a great point. My
That's huge.
goodness.
That's
My
huge.
goodness, that's a big point. What's man? Yeah, that's a big bomb right there. People rewind that, listen to it, because if you're looking to do things fast and efficient, and at the same time meet all the protocol standards, the technology can get you there. Let's talk about that, Chris. Like the future. Well, what are your future plans with RPA in your organization?
So RPA is an incredibly powerful tool. So like APIs have their place and they're fantastic for software that supports it, but there's a lot of legacy platforms and there's a lot of things that just APIs won't work for. And RPAs, I feel like, are incredibly valuable with that. Like for example, RPAs are, I feel like, much more malleable and their abilities are far more broad than an API would be. What I mean by that is you can build something that can take something from Excel. There's almost nothing you can't build with an RPA. And you guys are much more of an expert than I am with this. But I feel like your imagination is the limit when it comes to what you can do with an RPA.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Very true. Very true. And I think, the one thing that's really important that you brought up is especially in your industry, in order to scale, there comes a labor cost, right?
Yeah.
It's always been associated with accounting, always been associated. The bigger you are, the more people you have to pay, right? And most of that pay is done on these things that you're saying take hours and hours and hours of doing that are mundane, right? And what we're seeing in the RPA is once people get it, once people understand it, I think you were a little different because you had an idea when we first talked to you. You already had a vision of what you wanted to do. We just sort of like fill in the gaps for you, right? We sort of, okay, yeah, we could do that. You already had an idea. Most people don't even have that, right? But when they do, that light bulb clicks on, like, oh wow, I don't need to have John do this. I don't need to have Jane do that anymore. We can have them do this because that's totally taken off their plate. They could use them, and it allows them to be, like you said, it's hard to get individuals to get paid for that because they don't want their head down for 6 hours working on some paperwork, right?
Right.
They'd rather work 6 hours being creative, being productive, bringing more value to the company.
Yes.
And what we're seeing a lot more accounting firms see that once they implement it.
You hit the nail on the head.
And if I could interject, I think you really hit the nail on the head, and you really saw, I guess, what I've seen too is, like, in my experience, like in public, and my dad was in it, my granddad was in it. Public has the potential to be a phenomenal career path, because what it allows you to do, if you're able to, is be a great resource for your clients. You can be proactive with tax planning. You can be basically, whenever there's any issue, you can be there on your client's speed dial. So the ability to provide a good client service is definitely there, but what's hampered CPAs is the burden of compliance, I would put it. Because no one gets into the industry because they like filling out forms. Like, I love Excel. I would just live my life in Excel if I could. And I feel like that's pretty common with a lot of CPAs, but no one gets into the industry to just spend their time filling out forms.
Right.
It's problem solving that we get into it for. We enjoy problem solving. We say, hey, my client has this issue. Is this something we could plan around, or is this something I need to figure out that's already happened? Is it planning or is it compliance? So what I feel like a lot of people get into is they are not able to really spend the time building a book of business. They're not able to spend the time being a value-added consultant to the clients. They just get there because they have to get returns out. There's not an option of being late. There's not an option of not doing it. It has to be done. And they spend so much time just doing the mundane, like filling out Excel, doing the work papers, doing the forms, doing reviews, that it's not until you can build a firm with maybe 1 to 2 people under you, your associates and a senior, that you really get to the level where you can spend that time being a value-added consultant at the partner level. But if you're a sole member CPA or a small member firm with 2 to 3 people, you're still stuck where you're both pay prepared and you're the one trying to do the consulting.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of stuck in a world where you're spending all your time just doing all this, filling out the forms essentially.
Right.
So RPA has really allowed our users and the industry to get away from that and spend more time with their friends and family and being a better CPA to their clients.
That's good. That's good, Chris. I think basically in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen, uh, business owners, entrepreneurs, essentially, if you have to do a bunch of paperwork, that keeps you away from being able to be in front of the people you're serving. Okay. Now, the paperwork is important because that is the foundation of what you're doing. But if you can find a way to get those repetitive things that you do every day just to be done efficiently and accurately, so then you could then take that energy that you would have spent there and put that towards things like, customer facing, networking, relationship building, or just basically not working as much. All those are good boxes to check, right, Chris?
Oh, and there's so much, there's so much more I didn't even get into. Like, for example, a lot of our users, they are both the bookkeepers, so they do the books and they do the taxes. And the problem
Wow.
with that is during tax season, you're slammed. There's not a whole lot of bookkeeping you can do because you're working on the returns.
Yeah.
So if you're actually doing returns properly, like the way best practice, work paper to return, you're limited by the amount of bookkeeping where you can take in because you only have a limited time on the tax side.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the return itself is, I mean, in all honesty, it's the tax return is a bit of a commodity. The tax return is basically no different than gasoline somewhere. If you see gas prices on your left as like 238, on your right is 240, you're going to go the one that's 238.
Mm-hmm.
The return is kind of a commodity too. What keeps a client is, the additional services you provide, the bookkeeping, the consulting, that's what keeps a client.
Yep.
So the more time you can spend doing this other stuff, the more client retention you're going to have.
Good point.
And the more additional services you can provide.
Good point.
And you can also, like you said earlier, the scale is unlimited because now you don't have to worry too heavy on labor because you can start scaling and getting more clients. That could be your total focus. So now the game has changed where the scale and labor aren't the same. Now it's like we can scale and still continue doing the same thing because a bot does the same thing over and over for every single client.
Actually,
Wonderful.
a good buddy of mine has his own firm, and when I first approached him, like, kind of said, like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, and this. Like, as soon as you need money, let me know because I will not only buy this, I'll invest in you. Because the issue he has his own firm, but he has a hard time growing because once you get to a certain level of revenue, to grow beyond that, because there's only so much you can do yourself, you need to hire somebody.
Right.
So he has to hire. He can't afford to hire a full 60,000 person a year staff. So you can only hire like a part-time person, and finding someone who is dedicated, experienced, for part-time has been very, very difficult. So he's had to share somebody with like multiple other partners or multiple other people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just been a pain for him. But what this allows his firm to do is not have to be forced where you have to find a part-time employee. You can scale to a much higher revenue point where when you're ready to bring on your 60,000 person, you've already have enough revenue. You can do that. So you're able to do more with just yourself. So when you get to the point where you need to bring on a 60,000 year associate, you can find somebody of high quality,
Chris,
pay them what they deserve to be paid.
That's big.
Right.
That's big. We're coming in for a landing here. Our final couple questions. Chris, somebody who's on the fence about RPA, what would you say to someone? Because a lot of people don't know what this is. The stats say less than 2% of small and medium-sized business owners even know this thing is in existence. But we know everyone needs it, but a lot of folks are on the fence about it. What would you say to somebody that's on the fence about RPA?
Well, I'm assuming your listeners have a pretty good understanding of what RPA is. I would imagine they fall within that 2%. I would say to your users, if you are considering RPA, if there is a task you have that is slow, that you feel like anybody could do this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you just want to get your people away from those tasks that they're overqualified to do, so they can spend more time doing what they should be doing with their qualifications. And RPA is perfect for you. Like, that is the idea. Is somebody who has the education experience should be using the brain for decision making and planning, not for doing routine tasks.
Man, that's a t-shirt. Okay, all those words.
Yeah.
Okay. Wilton, any final words?
I think most of our listeners, not only now but down the line, because this was going to go. A lot of accountants are going to be looking at this podcast. if they need more understanding of what it is that you do, how you could service them, or even enlighten them about RPA, because I know what you do, what you have right now, accounting firms all over need it, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
So how can they reach you? What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
So like there's a few ways. I'll even give out my personal cell. If you just want to give me a call at 512-318-3196, happy to take the call. You can also reach out to our website, ask for more info. You can email me at cmundon@littlenewt.com, MUNDON. LittleNewt is actually, so like the reason why we called the company LittleNewt is not because I'm a big fan of the animal. My grandpa's nickname was LittleNewt. Like when he was a kid, he would follow this old Swede around, and the Swede's name was Newt. So he would walk down the town, like in I think it was Watertown, South Dakota. People would say, "Hey, there goes Big Newt and Little Newt," and just that nickname stuck with him. So when we came to the company, I was thinking of potential names for it, and it was like all the names just sounded boring, like just something textually. And then I just saw a picture of my grandpa hanging on the wall. It was COVID, and I went to go quarantine at my parents' place in South Dakota. I just saw a photo of my grandpa. I was like, "Oh, Newt, we'll call it Little Newt." And that's kind of how the name of the company came. But it's,
that's good.
It's LITTLE. It's LITTLENEWT. So cmundon@littlenewt.com.
Yeah, I love that story. You told me that story a while back. I love that story, man.
Man, it's so good.
Right.
So good.
And it part of it is like, because you're not just an honor, but it's like the pains of compliance is something that's interacted not just me, but like 3 generations of my family. Like it impacted my dad and my grandpa. Like my grandpa would miss baseball games and come home late because of it. My dad had the same issue when he was at Arthur Anderson. I had the same problems, like broken promises, family issues, just strains that have affected 3 generations of my family that we're just trying to find a software solution for.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that's so important because, especially now, I mean, there's so many opportunities out there to really minimize your time behind the desk doing stuff like that and whatever it is that you do. So you can spend more time with family and friends and do the things that you love to do. And so I think that's so important. Everything that you shared with us, all your contact information, we'll put in the show notes so you guys that are listening can reach out to him and talk to him and see what he's doing. This is what he's working on is something we're enjoying every minute of it, man. And it's really to see what you're capable of doing, and then seeing the potential for this for other businesses is like, it's mind blowing. It's like, wow, this can be big. This is going to be big. It's not could be. It's going to be. It's going to be
big. And to your users who are thinking about RPA and have their own, CPA practice or EA practice, our pilot program is launching for this coming busy season, so this spring. We would love to have you join our pilot program. And thank you.
Yeah. Well, any more insight on that? Anything else?
So we're launching. The idea we want to see what our software is good at and what it needs to be improved on. That's going to be a big part of this coming tax season.
Okay.
So we want to get it out there in the hands of users because it's been in development for about a year now. We want to get out there in people's hands. We want to see like, hey, this is what we're excelling at. This is what we need to be improved, and kind of double down on that after this tax season. So when it comes out after the summer for the fall tax season, the software just gets more and more and more robust. So we're offering the software is going to be on a per user basis. And for firms who have an interest in doing this and want to join the pilot program, it's going to be whatever the monthly payment for would normally be. It'll be half for them for the life of their subscription. So if we charge $100 per user per month for people who do the pilot program, it's only $49, and it's for as long as they stay with us. So it would never go up. If they stay with for 10, 20 years, it'll always stay the exact same price.
Grandfathered in is always a nice thing.
In fact, if you guys are listening, take a look at it. At least find out about it, because this is something grandfather this in. Trust me, because it's called supply and demand.
Yep. Chris, man, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen.
Guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, LittleNewt, you got the information. It'll be in the show notes. Reach out to Chris. He can help you get connected. Don't waste your time. Maximize your time. Don't waste your moments. Optimize them, ladies and gentlemen. This is the RPA Today Show. Until next time.